All right, so we welcome Orioles minor league infielder Cadyn Grenier into the podcast. And Cadyn, first of all, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, man, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and so we've had some O's minor leaguers on the pod in the past. Happy to have you on, and another guy who was in Norfolk last year, and that's where I wanted to start. You continue to climb the system. You get to Norfolk last year. Obviously, spent most of the year in Bowie. But what was it like to be in AAA? Do you start to get that feeling at all that like you're one step away from the big leagues when you get there?
Well, absolutely. I think I was only there for 5 games, but you play against a lot of guys. Like we played against Durham for those 5 games, and they had a lot of guys that had big league time, and so you don't see that as much in AA. And so when you get to AAA, and you're kind of like, hey, these are a lot of guys that have been up to the league. They've played. They've spent some time up there. You kind of get the feeling of like, hey, man, like I'm really close, and that's only one more little step.
Yeah, and obviously, it's cool to be around some guys who, you're not just playing against who have been in the big leagues, but there were guys on that Norfolk team who had already been in the big leagues. Did you chat with anybody at all about kind of big league experience, or just who were you able to kind of pick their brain a little bit once you got to AAA?
I really didn't, to be honest. And the nice thing is I've been around a lot of the guys that were in Norfolk, whether it was when I was with them in Delmarva and Frederick in 2019, and then a lot of guys that I had just met for the first time, and so I kind of was just more just hanging out, getting the experience, seeing how they do some of the stuff that they do. But no, not in particular. I didn't really sit there and ask too many questions.
So I want to talk about Bowie and being on that team, because obviously that's where you spent most of your year. Your first taste of AA came in 2021. And, just being on that team with, obviously everyone's going to talk about DL Hall and Adley Rutschman and Grayson Rodriguez all being on that team, but just the amount of talent that you guys had throughout the year in Bowie, like before I get to anything else, like how much did that excite you to be a part of this system where you guys are all kind of climbing the ranks together?
I mean, it's great, and it's really nice knowing that every time you show up somewhere, you're gonna know somebody. Especially with how we've progressed. Going into the season this year, I know I'm gonna know at least 85% of the team. And so that's a comforting thing for us when you're moving along, and there's going to be people there that you recognize and have played with and used to and stuff like that. But like especially Bowie, there's a lot of guys that I've been with for a couple of years, and some guys that got drafted maybe a year after me, or guys that I haven't spent so much time with, and they kind of just mixed right in and blended right in with the rest of us, and so it was really nice.
Yeah, and one of those guys obviously is Adley Rutschman. So I wanted to go back to the Oregon State days, because as people know, you were teammates with Adley in Corvallis. You guys obviously had some great seasons there, including a national championship. So before I get to just playing with Adley and being on that team, like what do you remember from that moment, winning it all in Omaha?
Oh man, I tell people all the time. I've done almost everything that an amateur and pro baseball player can do, other than win a World Series. I won state championships in high school. I got to go to Omaha, and then I won it, and that winning that title is the single greatest accomplishment that I feel I've done so far. And part of it was just because we had such a great team there, and it's such an exciting tournament, man. And I tell kids all the time, like, yeah, I'm biased because my college experience went so well, but I really wish everybody had the opportunity to go to Omaha and play at that TD Ameritrade Park in front of 30,000 fans and millions more on TV. Man, it was the most incredible baseball experience I've ever had.
So I have been to TD Ameritrade as a broadcaster. It was not the College World Series. It was the Big Ten tournament is also held there. When I was calling games for Maryland, we went there in 2019. And even there, like the Nebraska fans show up like crazy, and they almost make it not close to, the College World Series, but they fill up that place. But take us through like what it's like when that place fills up for the College World Series. You guys are, playing a night game, getting close to the finals, like, because it's a cool experience where you've got fans from both teams, but you also just got baseball fans everywhere just there to experience it.
Well, and I've heard people explain it as it's like a baseball fans Disneyland in a sort of way, because they have so much to do just outside the stadium and stuff, which it's a really cool venue. But when you step on that field, man, and it feels like probably what's exactly what it feels like to be in the big leagues, a big stadium full of a ton of people. It's gonna be really loud. But the thing that I think separates it from everything else is there's so much on the line, and so there's this like uneasy feeling of, hey, like this is amazing, but we still got to do something crazy here, and we got to do something special. And but if you've never played in front of people, it would be quite overwhelming. That's 25-30,000 fans. And when we were there, it was probably 85% Arkansas fans in the final. And then we had a decent section of probably, I don't know, a few hundred to 1,000 Beaver fans, a lot of friends and family and stuff, but it was so much closer for them. It almost felt like an Arkansas home series. But it's still exciting no matter what. The electricity in the stadium is just unbelievable.
You remember what you felt like when that pop-up dropped in foul territory to keep your guys' season alive, or was that just like a blackout moment for you guys?
I remember what it felt like. It was such a terrible feeling. And I can remember kind of giving it what we call like a courtesy jog towards first base, knowing that this ball is going to be caught or it's going to be foul. So I have nowhere to go anyway. But kind of just taking a little jog down the line, just being like, man, like this season's over, we're done, blah, blah, blah. And then it dropped.
How much more special does it make it that like obviously tying the game, go to extras is all the big moments from that game. But like when people think back to that College World Series, like that play is the first play they think of. And how much, more does it mean to you that like you're a part of that picture right there that everyone thought was going to be a Razorback championship and it changed in the blink of an eye?
Oh, I mean, obviously looking back, it's amazing, the best baseball moment I've had, and just like even talking about it, I still get goosebumps, like just shivers going up my body, just because I have a picture of right after I got the hit, the next pitch or whatever, and I just remember the emotions of hitting that ball and immediately knowing, oh my God, I just tied this after everything. And but it is funny you talk about like, was it like a blackout moment with the fly ball? I'll tell you what, after I got that base hit and got to about first base, everything that was being said, being yelled, being screamed, I don't remember anything between me hitting that ball and getting to first base. No sounds, no crowd, nothing. And it's something that just that entire sequence of events is something I will never forget.
Now, when I've had other Orioles minor league guys on here, I feel like Adley Rutschman always comes up, whether they bring it up or I bring it up. But with you, we got to bring it up because you don't just know Adley from the Orioles. You guys were teammates at Oregon State. So, you were a year older and obviously got drafted a year before Adley into the Orioles system. But at what point, when he steps onto campus, when he, wins the number one catcher job for you guys, like at what point do you start to realize like, this isn't just another really good player coming through Oregon State who's going to be drafted high, like that this guy is a dude who might go 1-1 in a couple of years?
To be honest, it wasn't until like his sophomore year, so my junior year. And the only reason I say that is because his freshman year, he was also playing football. And he walked on, tried out for the freaking football team, and the guy gets the starting kicking job. And so his freshman fall and stuff, I didn't see a whole lot of him. And so I didn't get a very good, sense of Adley, and he wasn't 100% focused on baseball. But boy, when I tell you, he came back that next fall and just all focused on baseball. You look at his sophomore season and my last year there, then you're like, how can this get better? The guy was unbelievable. Him and Trevor Larnach hitting back to back was, one of the most unbelievable 1-2 punches in the 3-4 hole or the 4-5 or whatever it was. And that's when you start to realize like, hey man, this guy's got the bat and he's by far our best defensive catcher. This guy is special. And then he was just like, well, let's see what he does next year. And what did he do? He followed it up and did the same thing next year. So, it was definitely that sophomore year when he came back and really took us and been like, oh, wow, this guy's legit.
Yeah. Have you noticed like, how is he changed either as Adley off the field or Adley on the field from early Oregon State days Adley to top prospect in baseball, on the verge of the big leagues Adley, because you've kind of been around him for most of that track through baseball?
Well, and the nice thing about Adley and one of the reasons that I like being around him is you don't know, like you can't tell that Adley is the top prospect in baseball and that Adley is going to be, a future perennial all-star in the big every year or something like that. Like you just don't know. He's such a laid back, just goofy guy that, it's fun to be around him because regardless of who he is, you wouldn't know, and I can't say that for a lot of the other guys I play with. You're kind of like, okay, yeah, this guy's good and he knows it and he acts like it. Adley's different, man. Adley does his work. He doesn't say much about it. And I just felt like he hasn't all this recognition and all that get to his head. And I love that about him.
Yeah. And it's obviously for many reasons great to have him in the O's system. But let's get back to you because, a year before the Orioles took Adley Rutschman in the first round, they took you at the end of the first round. I believe it was one of the competitive balance picks, pick number 37 going at the end of the first round. But, what was your draft process like? How much had you heard from the O's before the draft? How much were you keyed in on the fact that they were, looking at you at Oregon State? And then what was that moment like when, your name's called and, you're going to the next level?
Well, I mean, honestly, I hadn't spoken to the Orioles. I hadn't even the slightest clue that the Orioles were interested in me. And then I don't know, 10 or so minutes before I was drafted, I got a call from my family advisor and he was like, hey man, like, I think the Orioles have some interest in you, at 37, would you do it? And I was like, well, yeah, absolutely. He goes, okay, well, I'll give you a call back if they lock it in and say they're going to draft you. Well, homeboy never called me back. So I'm sitting there and the Orioles pick comes up and I'm just kind of like, man, I've been sitting in this room for a couple hours now, seeing a couple of my buddies go, and then the Orioles come up and I'm like, he never called. Well, sure enough, he did it on purpose so that I was surprised, and so just watching the TV kind of just with no expectations whatsoever. And hearing my name called was really, really cool.
Yeah, I've talked to a couple other guys about this, and actually I was talking to Nick Vespi on the podcast about it, and he talked about how he had heard basically nothing from the Orioles, and then he just saw on Twitter that he had been drafted by the Orioles, and then a scout reached out to him and said, hey, I was the guy who talked to you 2 years ago. I'm with the Orioles now. I told them to draft you, basically. So it's kind of interesting stories, how everybody has gotten picked. And so you're in the system, and that kind of leads me to my next question. You had that kind of, half year after the draft where, you go to Delmarva at the end of the year, and then a lot of things change in the Orioles system. A whole new regime takes over. Was it concerning at all? I know you're a recent first round draft pick, so it's probably a little less concerning than for guys who were picked in the 25th and 30th rounds. But what were your thoughts about, I've been here for 3 months and they're kind of cleaning house in this system and bringing in a whole new regime at the top?
Well, I mean, for me personally, yeah, it was pretty concerning. Not in any way that I thought they were bad for the organization, just in a way of the guys that really fought for me in that room on that draft day, they're not with us anymore. So you kind of look and go, well, are these the same guys that, they're going to look at me and go, we would have never drafted him. And all of a sudden, my value to them decreases versus what it was with the previous guys. So obviously that was concerning. But at the same time, all I know is, no matter what, if I go out and play and perform, I believe that anybody that is running the office would like to have me on the team. So there was that kind of back and forth of like, hey, don't worry about who's there. You're still fine, whatever. But there's also like, man, I wonder if I'm going to be valued the same way as the guys that drafted me.
Yeah, it's definitely something that most of the guys in that system at the end of that 2018 year kind of had to go through, I know. And, I did want to ask, like, you've now gotten to work with both regimes, obviously the first one very briefly, but since you've seen the change, and I know, coaching staffs have gotten younger across the board at the minor league level, a lot of new positions have been created for you personally, with just the people you've worked with and the work that you've put in and the help you've gotten, like what have been the biggest changes and the biggest things that have helped you since Mike Elias took over and has made more and more hires that have kind of, fit his mold of the people that he wants in the system?
Well, it's crazy. Honestly, it is because, with how fast our technology and the way that we use the technology in baseball is growing, and like you said, I had a very small time with the other regime in Delmarva. But it was like getting hit with a freight train the next spring training with all the analytics and the numbers and the computer systems and stuff that they're running on us. And it was crazy. You're like, man, I never thought any of this could be so complex, but it's also so simple because I don't have to worry about it. They give me all the information because they're the ones that do the work on, you know, you did this and these were your numbers and this is what the analytics say and all, like I don't have to look at them and figure it all out. But I'm also not a big numbers guy. I'm not a big look at your at bats and your home runs and stuff. If you ask me midway through the season how many home runs I have, I'm 99% sure I'm not going to know. Like I don't look at stats. And so the whole analytics thing isn't necessarily right up my alley, but there's been a lot of stuff that they have implemented that I have used in terms of game planning against pitchers, and stuff like that. Like, going into a game, I feel pretty confident. Hey, I know what this guy's, what he's trying to do to me, and I know what I need to do to attack back. And that's the kind of stuff that they've really put into play a lot that I'm becoming a big fan of.
How much of a conversation is it? Because we know there's a spectrum of guys in the minor leagues where I know there's guys who are like all in 100%. I want every piece of data you can give me. And there's guys who are even further down the spectrum than you are that are just like, don't talk to me about it. I'm going to do my routine I've done every day since I was 6 years old. I'm going to go out and play ball and that's it. How receptive are they to knowing that every guy on that roster is going to look at this stuff differently and kind of curating, what information they give to them to every separate guy?
Well, and I can only speak on a small amount of guys that I've been around in terms of coaches and whatnot. Because you look at, I've only had two managers. I've had Buck Britton for what'll upcoming be this my third year, and I had Kyle Moore as another one. And the staffs that I've had, they're very receptive to, okay, you don't want all this information, then we're not going to make you look at all this information. And if they see something in the numbers, they think, hey, maybe you should look at this, they might bring it to you, but they're not going to force it down your throat. And so for the guys that absolutely love it, man, they can eat that for days because there's so much of it. And for the guys that just want no part of it, which I would say there's not too many because there's so much good information that guys like, you know what, I kind of do like a little bit of this. They're not going to shove stuff that you don't want to know, in your face. And so I think that's the best thing about these guys a lot of times is they're going to give you what you want and they're not going to force stuff on you.
And it's been great to see, different guys adapt, different guys buy in and how they've built the rosters, built these coaching staffs. And, seemingly, there's coaches coming in that they're not that much older than you, to be honest. Guys are getting hired. A guy like Jalen Ferguson, who literally gets released by the Orioles and they say, wait a second, come back as a coach immediately. And here he is right back into the system. But, I wanted to talk about, we're talking about you're rising through the system. And now, you spent a whole year at AA. You get the cup of coffee in AAA. I think most Orioles fans are expecting you to be in Norfolk in April. And so my question is, what were your goals for this offseason? What have you been doing to try to achieve those goals heading into 2022?
I had a couple of lingering like health issues last year with just different parts of my body. And I've really worked a really hard this off season to try to correct some of the stuff that could be causing them. Nothing major, but like actual like a knee thing that I played through all year. And I've worked really, really hard to try to find how I control that. And so that was my main goal this season, especially to really just try to get as healthy and get as good of an idea of what I need to do every day to minimize, the stress that I put on my body. And just that way I can play a lot more comfortably every day. And then secondly, I finally got with a really good hitting guy that lives here in town. And one of my big focuses was, look, the bat has to come around a little bit more. I know it's in there, but how can I make it more consistent? And we worked pretty hard. And then unfortunately, because of the MLB situation, I haven't been able to work with him in a couple months now, but I'm still able to take the tools that he gave me and the lessons that I've learned with him and put them into my everyday hitting routines. And so, I've just been working really hard at those two things, especially. And I think honestly, I've done a better job this offseason than I have any other off seasons of being more prepared for spring training than I ever have been.
Yeah, so speaking of spring training, what is that, if what does that schedule look like? Because we know guys are starting to filter in this week into Sarasota. If you kind of have that schedule for yourself, what's that look like over the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, so I actually just got my day. I fly into Sarasota on Monday, and then I believe the next 2 days are just a lot of like physicals and intake testing, COVID stuff, all that good stuff. And then I'm actually on the field on Thursday, and so that doesn't leave more than, I think, 19 days. I think we break camp on the 29th to head up to Norfolk. And so that's by far the shortest I've ever been in Sarasota. In the other couple of years I've been to spring training, I've been there for 6.5, 7 weeks. And I expected that again this year. And what it sounds like, I just, with the big league stuff going on, I just was pretty much, hey, you're just gonna go to normal camp. There's nothing else going on down here. But I'm really excited. I love Sarasota, so I'm pretty stoked to get down there.
Yeah, and who are some guys? I can ask all about guys who on the field impress you, but like, who are you excited to see again, just as your dudes that you'll see in Sarasota next week?
Oh man, it's funny because I tell people all the time I hang out with two people. Really, I hang out with Blaine Knight and Tyler Joyner, both pitchers. Blaine was the Friday night guy, that Arkansas team that we beat in the College World Series, and I'm so different from them. They're both country boys. They love to hunt, fish, and I'm from Las Vegas and I have a ton of tattoos, and like I just don't fit in with them. And the three of us together, man, it is so much fun. And we talk just about every single day. And so they've been down there for a couple weeks now, and all I get is golf updates and dude, when are you coming? And I'm like, I'll be there Monday. Like, all right, we're going to the range Monday night. Stuff like that. But guys like Chris Hudgens, Pat Dorian, Kyle Stowers, guys that I played with a lot last year, guys that I'm familiar with. There's so many more, JC Escara and got other guys like that, man. I could go on and on about the dudes I love to hang out with.
Yeah, it's a good group of guys, an exciting group of Orioles guys you just named there. JC Escara, who's been on this podcast as well. But you mentioned, being a Las Vegas guy. This is kind of where I wanted to wrap up. It's kind of interesting because I think everyone just sees Las Vegas as a vacation destination. And like, your first thought is not that people live in Las Vegas. Do people like ask you about that? Like, what is it like? I guess I'm doing it right now. What is it like to live in Las Vegas? Is like, how much of it is that Vegas vacation life? And, how much of it is just, hey, you're from Las Vegas like anybody else is from some other city in the US?
Well, it's funny because there's always, and 99% of the time that I tell someone in Las Vegas, the follow-up question is literally, how far do you live from the Strip? Every single time, it does not fail. So for anybody listening, I'm about 10 minutes. Anyways, it's so nice. It's everything you could ever want to do is within an hour. We have a lake, we have a snowboard mountain that's an hour away. The lake is half an hour. If you want to go out in the dry lake bed with, do the sand dune type stuff, that's only 30 minutes. We have 800 golf courses. We have mostly everything is open late into the night, restaurants, fast food joints. So if you're out until 11:30, you're going to find somewhere that you can eat, and that's different than going to the East Coast and stuff where everything closes at 9, 8:30, whatever it is. But I really enjoy living here and growing up here. The weather is about as good as it gets, other than maybe the summer. If you can't stand the heat, but other than that, man, it's a lot of fun, especially if you know what to do, where to go, stuff like that. That's why whenever anyone comes into town, I'm like, please text me. I will give you every recommendation I can. and it'll make your time a lot more enjoyable. Because like you said, it is a vacation destination, but we also have almost maybe even top 3 million people now in the metropolitan area. So it's not a small town. It's not just the strip, but there's so much to do, man. I mean, there are parks everywhere that I've grown up playing at and stuff. And the baseball community here is absolutely massive. But it's such a cool place. And anyone that enjoys, partying, not even like, I'm not talking like hardcore partying, but even just seeing different shows, going to nightclubs, enjoying concerts, man, like this is the place. Especially now we have hockey, we have a professional soccer team, we got the Raiders, we could potentially be getting the A's, we have a AAA team. Dude, if you're a sport fan, this is the place to be right now too. And so I love this place. And the only thing I hate about it is, so many people are moving here for those same reasons, that living here is getting so expensive.
Yeah, I think somebody's got to reach out to you and get a live in Las Vegas commercial going. Every part except for the last sentence about living here is getting expensive. I mean, you could just go on that spiel, and I think you'd get a nice little endorsement deal right there, Cadyn. But last thing I had for you before we let you go, season right now for AAA just about a month away. As I know, assuming you are in AAA, which I think we all believe you'll be in Norfolk, you guys start a couple of days before the rest of the minors. So, this is probably an easy question for you, but you're now going to be one step away. I mean, we'll say it, the Orioles infield at the big league level is not where, the most strength is right now. So I'm assuming you're going in 2022 and that goal for this year is, this is the year that you're hoping to get to the big leagues.
Well, absolutely, man. And any minor league baseball player would tell you, just professional player and tell you in general, like, we're not doing this to play minor league baseball. We're doing this to get to the major leagues, to make good major league money, and to play in front of a ton of people, because that's what we've always wanted to do. So yeah, naturally going in this year, just like every year, it's literally just one step at a time. From the time I got to Delmarva, it's literally, okay, how do I get to high A? And then, I get to high A, they send me to double A next year. Well, how do I get to triple A? Now I'm in triple A. Okay, figure out whatever it is to get that next step. And that next step is the ultimate goal. So obviously going in this year, I think that's why I've been very motivated this off season to really get myself right, because I'm, like you said, I'm so close that, my enthusiasm about baseball and my motivation to do well is higher than it's been in a long time, because it's just like, man, you're so close to that goal that you've been working on your entire life. Now, let's get there. Let's get over that last little hump.
Well, Cadyn, thank you so much for joining us. We're excited for you to get started in Sarasota next week, get to Norfolk, and then who knows what happens next. Obviously, it's about who puts up numbers, who does it on the field. And there's, again, being in this organization, there's going to be chances to get to that next level. And obviously, as we talked about, that next one for you is the ultimate goal. But Cadyn, thank you so much for joining us. A lot of fun to just chat baseball and other things and have you hype up the city of Las Vegas for us. But thanks again.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.